After the complete destruction of Meta Quest's user interface that forced Horizon Worlds content down everyone's throat, I've recently noticed it's actually become a little bit more better, making it a little bit less about Horizon Worlds and making it now easy to find new VR games, sales and updates to your existing games, and this led me to cruising the sales charts today, only to see Plastic Battlegrounds rubbing shoulders in terms of sales and reviews with Batman Arkham Shadow, which I still feel is one of the best VR games ever to grace the headset. Plastic Battlegrounds currently has a review score of 4.9 with 7,000 ratings and 2,000 reviews. In comparison, Batman Arkham Shadow's review score is 4.6. with 7,200 ratings and also 2,000 store reviews, so this meant I had to do my own investigation. I jumped into Plastic Battlegrounds when it first appeared way back in 2024 and I quickly turned it off due to absolutely terrible performance on Quest, and it was lacking anything I personally would consider engaging. And obviously we now know that Forefront is on the horizon, but since then I've seen Plastic Battlegrounds featured and blow up on creators' socials, and I have to say it does make for some great role-playing content. But as a creator myself, I know how easy it is to make a game look good and much more entertaining than it really is for the poor schmuck who lays down some cash after seeing some of this content online and who plays a game as a real person. So in today's video I wanted to answer the question if Plastic Battlegrounds is actually good, or is this just a viral trend? And to be clear, Plastic Battlegrounds is still in early access, and I actually believe it always will be. But the developers do clearly state on certain levels that players can experience lag, even though the Quest version is now on number 267. So I picked up Plastic Battlegrounds on Meta Quest and PCVR for today's review, and I firstly wanted to cover the graphics because, as I said, my first experience was absolutely woeful. On the Quest, in terms of graphics, the presentation is still extremely sporadic. It's filled with some of the worst jaggers I've seen, and the frame rate is inconsistent and sometimes even unplayable. But there are times I actually find this game kind of impressive, to see such large sandbox environments filled with so much chaos, especially when you switch between the big and little mode. Big mode is basically like playing a VR god. You can spawn varying ranks of soldiers, a relatively large arsenal of weapons, tanks, helicopters, and even call in a full-on bomber raid, and on top of that, you can also interact with almost everything in the level. And even though the frame rate does still tank pretty frequently, seeing all the explosions and bits of colourful Lego flying into the air and soldiers' body parts flying around, overall it just makes you smile because it's obviously all just plastic, and in terms of presentation it's pretty unique. You'll often see heads of your enemies literally flying past you in mid-air, which would normally be absolutely horrific if this was real and full of blood. But in this game it just makes you smile because it's kind of amusing. The weapons look good and surprisingly feel good to use, but also they're still quite toy-like, with no reloading or ammo to be used, apart from one weapon which seems to be some sort of experiment which does have reloading, and the game is definitely better for it. All the bullet tracers are the same colour as the army using the weapon, which leads to some impressive colourful Star Wars looking blaster shootouts. On PC, the level textures can also look surprisingly crisp and shiny. Performance again though is sporadic and surprisingly similar to Quest, even though there is a few levels, for reasons I don't yet understand, that run extremely smoothly, and this is when you see the potential for a game like this in VR. In terms of content, there is a considerable amount of levels and a few gameplay modes. There's a boot camp which teaches you pretty much everything you need to know about the weapons. There's also explosives in the form of C4 and grenades.
I'm sorry, dude.
And includes driving tanks and a drone type platform which is super fun to use. Then there's a Sandbox mode which features 6 base levels and 6 experimental levels, but I'm not really sure the differences between them because they all seem to offer the same sporadic performance, especially on the Quest, and don't really do anything other than look different, so the word experimental just means these levels are just new ones to check out. There's also a Conquest mode which is basically Battlefield with capture the flag and ticket scoring, and then there's 3 empty levels for you to live out your fantasies of massive wars with toy soldiers, and this mode I can actually see the appeal. spectacle. This was probably my favourite way to play the game, even though it's more like watching a fight unfold, because overseeing massive battles just ignites the kid in you. But on Quest it's a bit harder to enjoy this mode due to the massive chugging frame rate drops, and regardless of all of this, there is something critically missing from the game as a whole, and it became more apparent the more time I spent with it, and it's basically about the player caring about what's actually going on. There's actually no game in the game, and that's what's missing at the moment. Right now it's just a sandbox physics play area, and there's a struggle to care about anything that's actually happening right in front of you. And this for me leads to me struggling to find a reason to want to keep playing, because death in this game isn't really impactful or meaningful, and nor is actually winning, and this just makes it feel like one big sandbox tech demo. You can spawn weapons whenever and wherever you want, and that in itself eliminates any challenge or sense of urgency. It's got all the framework though to be something actually really special, but it does desperately need a campaign. It needs a story with factions to really make it something you want to play and care about. There's also no online play, which seems absolutely crazy in a game like this, and unless you want to physically roleplay enjoying the game, it's just a janky physics playground. So at the moment, Plastic Battlegrounds is overall just a toy box in VR, but it is an extremely cool way to experience such a cool concept. It's violent, but it's toy violence, and blowing someone away with a shotgun, even though it's just plastic, still feels incredibly satisfying. It's also got really cool war machines, and they do feel very satisfying to use, and I do love using the tank. And the weapons sound great overall, but when you capture bases, it just doesn't feel like anything is changing on the battlefield, and it's way too easy to win. Using a rocket launcher just feels like a hack too, with no reloading, and you can shoot it every 2 or 3 seconds, making you pretty much unstoppable. And this puts the game in a weird place for me, especially when I look at other people's review on the store. I do like it, but it's also missing anything I would consider a good game. I can absolutely see the potential of how it could be so much more, and the price is crazy cheap. So I do recommend it to anyone looking for a laugh, but go in expecting to make your own fun, and be aware that you're actually taking part in a developer's experiment, rather than something you'll be thinking about long after you've taken the headset off. But one big takeaway I've learned today is how the younger audience is a big spokesperson for what is and isn't considered good content on the Quest platform in 2025. And this leads large creators who make entertaining content to making even more content for titles like this, therefore pushing it unnaturally above something like Batman to where it naturally shouldn't be. There's no way a game with the production value, story, performance, playability and graphics like Batman should be looking up at Plastic Battlegrounds in any meaningful metric. And it's not just Plastic Battlegrounds pushing truly epic VR games down the charts, but that's a conversation for another day. Overall, this game is currently a bit of a mess, but it does have potential, but only if the developers have the skills to lock in and improve pretty much everything I played today. And I would consider Plastic Battlegrounds mid at best, and that's especially true after playing Triangle Factory's upcoming game Forefront. But who am I but one man's opinion who doesn't agree with what is or isn't a good game these days? Well, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you ever so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about this game down in the comments, and I'll see you all in the next one.